When I first watched One Piece, the world felt wide open. Every island was a new dream, every pirate chased freedom, and the world government was just a name. Distant, harmless. But over time, the cracks started to show. The corruption, the lies, the history the world wasn't supposed to know. And then Oda gave us a single scene that changed everything. The moment that made us realize this world was never as free as it seemed. A world that looked free. When you think back to the beginning of One Piece, it almost feels like another era, a world untouched by the weight of history. The seas were bright, the dreams were loud, and freedom felt real. In the East Blue, the world government was barely a shadow. Marines were local bullies, not world enforcers. Captain Morgan raised statues of himself. Nezumi sold out Nami's village for pocket change. Men who abused power, not symbols of a global system. Back then, it all seemed simple. Pirates were free spirits chasing dreams. Marines were the law. There was no deeper meaning to justice, just people doing what they believed was right. The world felt balanced because it felt small. And even as we entered the Grand Line, that feeling didn't vanish. Each island had its own story, its own rules. Logetown was the town of beginnings and ends. Whiskey Peak, Drum Island, Alabasta. Every stop felt self-contained, like a different world with its own truth. The world government existed, but from where we stood, it looked distant and harmless. Even when names like Buster Call or Shichibukai appeared, they felt like world-building details, not signs of control. We didn't yet know how deep the system ran or what it was hiding. The early world of One Piece looked free. It felt free. The kind of world where anyone could set sail with nothing but a dream and a Jolly Roger and change their fate through will alone. But now, with everything we've seen, the celestial dragons, the five elders, Emu, we know that freedom was only an illusion. The seas were open, yes, but the world itself was never free. That's what makes looking back so powerful. What we once saw as adventure was built on lies, and somewhere in that bright, open world, the truth was already waiting for us to find it. The hidden rulers behind the curtain. As the story moved deeper into the Grand Line, that sense of freedom began to fade. Slowly, piece by piece, the truth started to take shape. A structure hiding behind every island, every government, every war. This was our first real glimpse of the world government's core. The five elders, calm, composed, and untouchable. At the time, they looked like wise leaders maintaining balance. But now we know they were something else entirely. The gatekeepers of a secret world, and around them, the system revealed its true layers. The Marines, the Cypher Paul units, the Shichibukai, and above them all, an authority that claimed to represent peace, but ruled through fear. Then came the celestial dragons. When they entered the story, everything changed. These weren't kings. They weren't heroes. They were living proof that the entire world was built on bloodlines and cruelty. People bowed, entire cities froze, just because of who they were. One breath of defiance, and someone's life was over. That moment wasn't just satisfying. It was symbolic. It was the first time anyone had ever struck back against the untouchable. And that's when it clicked for us. Freedom in One Piece was never real. It was always borrowed, always limited. The more Oda showed, the clearer it became. The world was ruled by people we were never supposed to see. The five elders were just the visible layer. The celestial dragons were the face of arrogance, but not the true rulers. Someone, or something, was still above them. By the time we reached the Sabaody and Marineford arcs, that system wasn't just background anymore. It was the story. The dream of freedom now stood face to face with the weight of the world's hierarchy.
お前の父親は海賊王ゴールド・ロジャーだ。命の終わりくらいわかる。ありがとう。
One Piece stopped being just about pirates versus Marines. It became about something deeper, a world built on control, maintained by silence, and ruled by hands the public would never see. And even then, we still didn't know the full truth. We didn't yet know that somewhere, above even them, sat the shadow of the true ruler, the one who would finally step into the light and change everything we thought we knew about One Piece. Clues that were hidden in plain sight. Looking back now, it's almost eerie how many signs were right in front of us. For years, Oda had been planting seeds, quiet, tragic moments that seemed like isolated stories. Until you start to line them up, the destruction of Ohara was the first great warning. An entire island of scholars, wiped out not because they rebelled, but because they asked questions. The government's reaction wasn't political, it was instinctive. They didn't just want to silence Ohara, they wanted to erase the very idea of knowing that was the moment we should have realized that knowledge was dangerous in this world. Robin's entire life became a crime, not for what she did, but for what she could read. And yet, at that point, we didn't connect it. Ohara felt like one tragedy among many. The story moved on, the Straw Hats kept sailing, and the world still seemed open. But then, we reached Alabasta.
よし、さあ読んでみせろ。骨グリップやらを。
アヒラによるアラバスタ征服。これが天暦239年。
Deep beneath the kingdom, carved in stone, was a message from the ancient past. The location of Pluton, a weapon capable of destroying the world. Crocodile thought he was chasing power, but what he stumbled on was the truth. The government wasn't guarding peace, it was burying history, and Oda didn't stop there. He mirrored the same event again, at Eni's lobby. Another Buster call, another attempt to silence truth. The very same weapon used on Ohara was unleashed again, this time against anyone who dared protect someone who knew too much. It wasn't a coincidence, it was a pattern. Every time someone got close to uncovering what happened in the Void Century, whether it was a scholar, a kingdom, or a pirate crew, the government responded with fire. Then came the subtle clues, the kind that only make sense years later. Remember Skypiea? A story about ancient ruins, forgotten gods, and a civilization erased by time. At the time, it felt like a self-contained myth. But the Shandian stone, the golden bell, and Roger's message carved into it, "I was here, and I will carry on your will," all pointed toward a shared history the government wanted gone.
ゴールディロジャー。
ここに至り、この文を最果てへと内属、ゴールディ・ロジャー。
And then, Doflamingo, a man born into the world's most powerful family, cast out and still carrying knowledge no one else dared speak aloud. He hinted that in Mary Geoise, something so terrifying, its exposure could shake the world.
俺が聖地マリージョア内部にある重大な国宝のことを知っているからだ。マリージョアに国宝。それは存在自体が世界を揺るが。
That wasn't just another empty line of villain dialogue. It was confirmation. The celestial dragons, the so-called gods of this world, were hiding something they couldn't even speak of publicly. Piece by piece, the world began to feel less like a sea of freedom and more like a giant stage built on top of a buried truth. And through all these moments, one pattern never changed. Whenever someone tried to bring light to that truth, the world government brought darkness. Oda never showed us the full picture back then, only fragments. The scholars of Ohara, the secrets in Alabasta, the ruins in Skypiea, the national treasure of Mary Geoise, all threads of the same tapestry, stretching back to a time erased from history. By the time we reached the Reverie and the legend of the empty throne, it wasn't a twist anymore. It was the answer we'd been chasing without even realizing it. For over 20 years, Oda hid the truth in plain sight. Every time we thought we were watching a simple adventure, we were actually watching a world desperately trying to protect its greatest secret. And when that secret finally began to crack open, the world itself started to tremble. The world trembles. Final clues before the reveal. By the time the reverie began, the world of One Piece had already started to crack. The Marines were restless. The Shichibukai system was collapsing. The balance of power that held the seas together, the so-called three great forces, was falling apart. And then, Oda gave us the calm before the storm, the empty throne. That scene was quiet, even elegant. The throne stood at the heart of Pangaea Castle, surrounded by 20 swords, symbols of the 20 kings who once created the world government. Every king swore that no one would ever sit there, that the world would remain equal under their rule, a perfect lie presented as peace. King Sterry's brief fantasy of sitting on the throne wasn't just a comedic moment. It was Oda reminding us of human nature. Ambition never disappears. And when someone is punished just for imagining power, you know that power already belongs to someone else. That's when the atmosphere shifted. The same episode quietly introduced a figure none of us expected, Imu. A shadow moving through a vault deep beneath Pangaea Castle, rows of cold chains, ancient weapons sealed away, and then a massive straw hat preserved in ice. At that moment, we didn't even know what we were looking at. A relic of Joy Boy? A symbol of the past? Whatever it was, it connected the distant Void Century to the present day. Proof that the world's deepest secret wasn't gone, it was being kept. Then came the conversations between the five elders. Quiet, deliberate, and terrifying in their simplicity. They spoke of a great cleansing, of lights that must be erased from history. They weren't talking about war. They were talking about selective erasure, the deliberate rewriting of the world's truth. They agreed to consult Imu, not a council, not a committee, a person, someone higher than the five elders themselves. That single line changed everything. For over 20 years, we thought those five men were the highest authority in the world, but in a single moment, Oda revealed there was someone above even them. We see the scattered images. Luffy, Blackbeard, Shirahoshi, all marked, cut, or pierced. Names of those who threatened the existing order, and in Imu's hands, a single photograph. Vivi, the Princess of Alabasta, a kingdom that once stood against the government's will. The descendant of one of the 20 founding families that chose not to move to Mary Geoise. That choice, made 800 years ago, had finally come full circle. The scene that broke the world. The empty throne, the symbol of global equality, was never empty. It was a stage built to hide the truth someone has ruled the world all along. And the terrifying part is how natural it looked. Imu didn't claim the throne, they simply walked toward it, as if it always belonged to them. No struggle, no words, just quiet acceptance from the supposed leaders of the world. That single motion, sitting down, rewrote the entire myth of One Piece, the lie of a free world, of shared rule, of equality under the 20 kingdoms. All of it burned away in that one moment. And as the five elders ask, which light shall be erased from history, we finally understand what One Piece has been building towards since Chapter 1. This isn't just a story about freedom on the seas. It's a story about freedom in a world built on lies. When that throne was claimed, the illusion shattered. The world we thought was free was never free at all. But that's exactly what makes One Piece so powerful, because even in a world built on lies and silence, people still dream. Robin still searched for truth. Luffy still chased freedom. And that's the heart of it. No matter how deep the darkness runs, the will to be free never dies.